I met my wife in college, and we've been together ever since. After 3 years of dating, we moved in together. We lived like that for another 3 years before getting married. 2 years later, my wife got pregnant, and we had a daughter. That's how life went on. Sure, we had our everyday arguments. What couple doesn't? But we always made up right away or even during the argument. In short, we had a classic family setup. After graduating, I got a job, then another, and started climbing the career ladder. Eventually, I earned enough to buy us an apartment. We renovated it nicely and moved in. My wife, by the way, went back to work after maternity leave. She did well, got a good position, and started earning decent money. Together with my income, we were making a very respectable amount. We accumulated everything. A home, even another apartment for our daughter to use in the future. Expensive cars. As the saying goes, a house full of plenty. I loved my wife. I never cheated on her, and I didn't drink. Well, not heavily. At least, my wife's work was connected to international business, so colleagues from abroad often flew in for negotiations. A little over a year ago, I began noticing that when these colleagues visited, my wife started staying out much later than she had in the past, but I didn't pay much attention to it. In the evenings, right before bed, she'd receive a flood of messages on Telegram or WhatsApp. I noticed something peculiar. When her foreign colleagues were in town, those evening the foreign colleagues were in town, messages would stop. A couple of times when she fell asleep, I checked her phone, but all the messages were deleted. For example, I clearly remembered her phone chiming at 11 p. But when I checked later, there were no messages after 7 p. in any chat. Then came the moment when a worm of suspicion burrowed deep inside me. One time, she came home late again, around 10 p. And I joked, "So, did you see your lover off?" I'd never seen such a frightened look in her eyes before. But when she noticed me smiling, she quickly smiled too and looked away, calling me an idiot. Moreover, she sometimes traveled abroad to visit her colleagues. One day, when the worm of suspicion had gnawed me to my core, I gave in and installed a spy app on her phone. It allowed me to control the device remotely, record the surroundings, take pictures using the camera, and send everything to a private account. When she left on another business trip, I came home after work, helped my daughter with her homework, and put her to bed. Then I logged into the app's dashboard and sent a command to record 10 minutes of her phone's surroundings. About half an hour later, the recording appeared. I listened and realized she was in a room with a man. They were speaking in English, discussing personal and mundane topics, laughing. It became clear that they were alone. Then I heard glasses clinking and her laughter. At that moment, my pulse shot through the roof. I sent another command to record for 20 minutes and take a picture. The image that came back was a black square. I understood the phone was lying face down. I sent a command to use the front camera, and the photo revealed the phone on a bedside table in a hotel room, with part of a bed visible. 15 minutes later, I received another recording. My hands were shaking as I pressed play. It was more talking and laughter. I was already in a state of disbelief, like this was all a nightmare. My world was falling apart before my eyes. I poured myself a drink, sent a command to record for 4 hours, and got drunk out of my mind. The next morning, my daughter woke me for school. I told her she could stay home and texted work to say I was taking a couple of days off. My wife was set to return on Sunday. Alone at home, I listened to the 4-hour recording but only got through 40 minutes. That's all it could take. It was unmistakably her voice, but in a way I had never heard in our 13 years together. It felt like being physically stabbed. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. I don't know whether it was from the alcohol or the situation. For the rest of the day, I went through cycles of rage, sadness, and numbness. Each emotional outburst seemed to kill off another part of the love I'd nurtured for her. all these years. By the evening, I was emotionally dead. I sent commands to the app again and saw photos of her in a restaurant, seemingly with colleagues. But at night, her phone was back on the bedside table, and the recordings were unmistakable. Only this time, there were no words, just the sounds of her and him together. I couldn't take it anymore and called her. She picked up on the fourth ring, out of breath. I asked why she was panting, and she said the elevator had broken, so she was taking the stairs. I managed to keep my composure, wished her a good night, and hung up. Then I sent another command to take a series of photos. This time, the phone was on the bed, and I got a clear shot of her sitting naked astride another man. Then came an audio recording where I could clearly hear the familiar sounds of my wife's voice, sounds any husband would recognize, and I knew exactly what was happening. That was the last straw for me. I saved all the recordings and photos. At that point, she felt like a stranger to me already. For the rest of her trip, I didn't try to gather more information. But what about our daughter? She was only 9 years old. On Sunday evening, closer to her return, she came home and tried to kiss me. I pulled away, reminded her I wasn't feeling well, and went to sleep on the couch in my office. The next morning, I woke up early, left for work before she got up, and spent the entire day like a zombie. Eventually, I gathered all the recordings and photos, put them on a flash drive, and recorded a video message to her on my phone while sitting in a conference room at work. In the video, I asked all the questions running through my mind. Why? What were you thinking? Was I such a terrible husband that you could just flush me down the drain like this? It was full of the kind of emotional outpouring you'd expect in such a situation. Then, I went to my boss and requested an urgent week-long vacation. I called my wife and told her I was leaving on a work trip that same day. I asked her not to pick up our daughter from her grandmother's, saying I had a surprise planned for her. That evening, I returned home, packed a bag, and threw the flash drive on the bedside table in the bedroom. Without saying much, I left in a taxi and went to our second apartment, the one we had bought for our daughter's future. From there, I called a friend and asked if he wanted to take a spontaneous trip abroad. He agreed, and that night we booked tickets. Early the next morning, we flew to Munich. While there, I told him everything. We drank, partied, and spent time with women. Honestly, I no longer felt any obligation to my wife. When she called, I didn't answer. I only texted her once to say there was a flash drive on the bedside table, and I wanted her to watch it. About 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with call after call, and messages poured in. I didn't even bother reading them. I didn't care anymore and turned my phone off. We stayed in Munich for 3 more days. By Saturday, I flew back home. Upon landing, I turned my phone on, and it took 5 minutes just to process all the missed messages and calls. I didn't read any of them. I didn't want to risk getting angry before stepping into the apartment. When I entered, there was silence. I quietly set my bag down, took off my shoes, and went to wash my hands. Then she came out of the bedroom. I had never seen her look like that before. Swollen, disheveled, her face a mess. Dropped to her knees and started crying, trying to explain herself through sobs and apologies. I kept my face emotionless and told her not to put on a show. Then, in a calm tone, I asked, "What are we going to do now?" She begged me to forgive her, calling herself horrible names and saying she didn't understand how she'd let things go so far. She claimed she still loved me and had always loved me, saying it only happened because she had become spoiled and ungrateful. She said that in the days I was gone, she had realized the full extent of what she had done. But as they say, revenge is a dish best served cold. I told her, we're no longer husband and wife. Now, we're just mom and dad for our daughter. We'll act like everything is fine, but I'll live my own life, and you can live yours. To me, you're no longer the one and only. You're just my co-parent. I told her where I had been and what I'd done. She said she understood and would endure whatever it took. Well, no one forced her to promise that. Now we live in the same apartment, though I've already bought another one in my father's name to avoid any property disputes. I usually sleep in the office, though occasionally I go to the bedroom for appearance's sake when our daughter might notice. There were a couple of attempts from her to hug me when I lay next to her, but I stopped them. We haven't been intimate for 6 months. I haven't told my parents anything. Only my father knows, and we agreed to keep it quiet. Once a year, we still go on a family vacation, but now it's separate beds. I've started living for myself again. I bought a motorcycle, quit smoking, joined a gym, and lost 10 kilograms. I'm getting back in shape. Abs are starting to show again. Sometimes I wonder when she'll say she's had enough and file for divorce, but she hasn't yet. I often catch her looking at me with those big pleading eyes like Puss in Boots from Shrek. But honestly, I couldn't care less. I see her trying, but I enjoy her pain. Recently, I left a box of condoms on my office desk on purpose just to see her reaction. She walked in, saw them, and darted out of the room. I didn't chase her. She's still working, but she no longer stays late. Once she tried explaining that she had cut ties with the man except for professional interactions. But I told her her relationships don't concern me anymore. Whether she's spreading her legs or not, don't need a report. She also told me that the man she'd been involved with had a family of his own, and she swore she avoided him unless absolutely necessary for work. I simply replied that her relationships with her sexual partners were none of my business and that she didn't need to inform me whether she was opening her legs or not. As for myself, I no longer limit my actions. Sometimes I come home late, or not until after our daughter has gone to bed. On Fridays, for example. If I want to have sex, it happens. I might return early in the morning, head to the office to sleep, or go to the bedroom if she's not there. Domestically, nothing has changed. I still buy groceries and cook because I enjoy it, and I'm good at doorsies. I can cook it. We've always had a cleaning lady, so I don't bother with that. I still pay for the apartment as I did before. As for what she spends her money on, or whether she spends it at all, I couldn't care less. Our communication is only warm and affectionate when it concerns our daughter or her parents. Interestingly, my relationship with her mother is excellent. My mother-in-law is a proper and highly principled woman who values family deeply. I'm pretty sure that's another reason my wife doesn't want to leave. She's terrified of her mother finding out. My mother-in-law would definitely demand to know what happened, and I wouldn't lie to her. One time, my wife came to me with a personal request. I told her she should have picked a lover from the same city or country. Then she could have had help with these requests. I enjoy mocking her, and I must admit it brings me satisfaction. Yes, maybe I've become a monster now, but it's a monster she created herself. Amazes me how persistent and patient she is. Her efforts are like a red flag waving in front of a bull. I'm curious how much longer she can keep this up. And don't come at me with the think of your child argument. When she was flying around the world spreading her legs for that scumbag, she didn't seem too concerned about her daughter or her husband. That's how I live now. My daughter and I have a great relationship. We're excellent parents for her. She has no idea what's going. She has no idea what's going on, and I intend to keep it that way. Our mutual friends don't know either. Maybe one day, when I grow tired of testing her or decide I've had enough, I'll turn off the bastard mode and sit down for an honest talk with her. But not now. Not now. Yet. And that's where our story ends for now. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.